Hello, my friends. Welcome to another hands-on session, this time about variants. So this is where I hope to give you practical demos using Penpot, and you can ask me questions about Penpot live, and there will be a Q&A after each section and a big one at the end. So if you have any questions or you have any feedback, please feel free to enter it in the chat as we go along. A little reminder, if you're new here, please subscribe or follow on whichever platform you're watching this, and that way you'll get reminders for the next hands-on session and any other cool videos from Penpot in the meantime. And you know what? Feel free to give us a fave or a heart or a thumbs up. It does let me know that these sessions work for you. In case you haven't met me before, I'm Laura Kalbag. I'm a designer and a developer, and I work with Penpot on education. I've been working professionally in tech for about 16 years, probably even more than that. And I do have stories to tell, but that is not for right now. We have exciting news. Variants are out now, and we know that you've been excited for variants, and hopefully this hands-on session has come along at just the right time. First up, let me quickly tell you what variants are. In fact, let me show you what variants are. So component variants are a way to create different variations of a component. So does your component need to come in different sizes, different colors, different levels of elevation? Variants make it easy to define these properties and pick from them when you're using a component in your design. And so here you can see I've got a component for the basic star and a size property, and I can choose between large, medium, and small. And I have choosing options to choose between the color blue or pink or white. And so that's really basically what component variants, or compariants as I'm apparently going to call them, is for. Right, so next up, let's just first work on what are components and do a little primer for that. So components are a way to store design patterns for reuse. So here I'm going to jump to my little components page, not that one, a different one. So you might have a design pattern like this little avatar icon thingy here, and you can select any object or any group of objects and turn it into a component. So here you can see that this is a group that has a flex layout applied to it. I'm going to right click that and choose create component. You can also see here that the Command K or Control K keyboard shortcut will create that component as well. So now I have a component, and you can tell it's a component from this little double diamond icon here. And now I've got this component, I can go into the Assets panel, and my component, it's taking a second to generate the preview for it, but it is available inside my local library. So I can then pull it out my local library, and I have a copy of that component. And you can put this wherever you want. And this is a copy, so it says here copy, but it says it is the avatar component. And if you update your main component, so if I here decide, actually, I don't really like purple, I'm going to change it to pink, you can see that updating the main component will then update and change the copies of the component. And there we go, it's appeared in the little library there. I think my internet connection is being a little bit challenged today. So once you have your component in a library or a set of components in a library, you can go to this Manage Library section here, and oh, I've already published it. Let me unpublish that a second. I can publish my library, and this will make it available to the entirety of my team. And if I now jump into another file, just gonna give that a quick refresh as I just disconnected and reconnected the library. And now I can go into assets in another file. This file is in the same team. And I can say, oh, I'm going to add a library. And here I can see my hands-on 13 variants file is available as a shared library, and I can connect that by pressing this plus icon. And now, if I open that up, oh, I've got components in here, and there is my avatar. And I can continue to make changes to that avatar component in the original file, and these changes will be synced across to all of the files that are using it. And you'll get a nice little notification that is warning you about it as well. So I think it's early on, but I'm ready to see if you have any questions about components before we continue, because I want to make sure that I'm answering everything as we go along in context, if possible. So, do we have any questions yet that we can look at about components? A reminder that you can ask questions on whichever platform you're watching this on. Oh, fabulous. Coming from Adobe XD, I miss such a simple thing like using a button or link hover state in an interactive prototype. So I'm looking forward to how it can be achieved now in Penpot. This is a question that I think the Penpot team has got the most over the last 24 hours since variants were launched. And I think that if you go into the community and you make sure that you mention this is something that you're interested in and explain your use case. But I agree with you. I think a lot of other people agree with you. It would be really cool if we can use those states from our variants in prototyping. And I'll show you a little bit more about how that might work with creating states in variants later on in this hands-on demo. Do we have any more questions for now? Okay, great. Well, let's then continue on to the actual variants bit of the hands-on demo. Let's look at using variants in UI design. So variants are a way to add defined variations for a component. So if we come back into our other file, and I did give you a little sneak peek earlier, but this is our card component we have here. And I'm just going to look at the demo version of this. So this is my component. I can select it from the layers. I can see that it's a copy of a component. Now, for this card component, I have the variation options of, for my variants, the level, also known as the elevation, the size of the component, the image, whether it's shown true or false, the button, the primary button, whether that's shown true or false, and a secondary button, when that's shown. Oh, and I've got a lot of extra values going on down here. I'll show you actually how to fix that in a minute. So I'm going to say maybe, oh, I want to add the primary button back in with true, or I can turn it off with false, or I can choose to make the size more compact or more spacious, or I can choose to change the color. Elevation is quite subtle. I don't know how well that's going to show on your screen, but I can switch between those things as well. Oh, excuse me. Right. And you see that all the while I'm changing between those different variants, the text that I've changed inside of the button and inside of this card here stays exactly the same. It's completely preserved, even though I'm switching between those variants. Maybe I'll show you how I might use a different version of this one. So I'm going to go into assets and I'm going to find this card component and drag it in. Come on, gremlins. Come on, internet. You can do it. I think this might be my flex layout. And there's a lot of cards in here. Did it end up somewhere funky? Let's have a look in the layers. Oh, it is somewhere. Oh, there we go. I dragged it into the wrong box. There we go. So maybe for this, I want to zoom in extremely. So for this card, perhaps I'm going to hide the image. I'm going to make it a more spacious size, and I'll keep that level because it's slightly different from the other one. I'm going to put a little bit of space between these two cards. So otherwise, it just feels too cramped. And I don't know, maybe in my card title, I'm going to say new adorable puppies available. Yeah. I need to do some tweaks to make that fit. Okay, and for my card text, maybe rescue puppies need good homes with friendly people. And maybe in my button text, I'll have sign up and find out more. And then again, I can choose to change these different options while this is selected and all my text is kept exactly the same. Maybe I would find an image of a cute puppy. I should have prepared that, shouldn't I? I'm sorry, I let you down. I talked about puppies and didn't show any. So all of these demos are available in the variants example template, which is now in the Penpot Hub. Let me show you. If you're not familiar, the Penpot Hub, you can access it from the Penpot main website. It is, you could get it from the plugins or the libraries and templates here. And the URL for that is penpot.app/penpothub. And if I go to libraries and templates, and I'm going to search variants, and oh, you know what? Maybe it's not been there long enough to be shown. So I scroll down. I could do a browser search as well, I'm sure, but I'm going to rely on my eyesight to recognize it. Nope. Okay, doing a browser search. There we go. And here is the variant examples template. And here I have all of the examples that you will see in the hands-on today, as well as a few extras as well. So if you want to go download it and play with it and import that file into your own Penpot account, you can do that whenever you like. So that is a very basic introduction to variants. Before I get on to showing you any more examples, do we have any questions about the basics of creating variants? Okay, fabulous. Now let me just check how I'm doing on time. We're good. We're good. She's not gone too far over time yet. So, right. Let's look at how to create component variants for ourselves. So I'm going to go back to that avatar component that I created before. And I'm just actually going to delete that one and break this component. Stop it being a component. Oh. Typical when I'm demoing something, I forget how to do it. All right, delete the main component and detach this instance. There we go. So now I just have a plain avatar, and I'm going to go into this new little file because it means that when I put it in here, you'll be able to find it easily. Okay, so I have an avatar. I'm going to create a component. I'm using Command K here. And you can see that the little double diamond and the little component information in the panel here shows that I've made an avatar component. Now I want to create a variant. So I can do that from this menu down here. I can create a variant. What I can also do is right-click it and create a variant from there. Or I can use the same keyboard shortcut again. So the same keyboard shortcut I used to create the component, again, to create a variant. And a variant is shown by this little purple border, thick border with the rounded corners around it. And that encapsulates all of your variants. It uses flex layout. You can actually change it to grid if you want to get fancy with it. I'll show you one that does that in a minute. I'm getting distracted. I'm getting distracted by all the cool things. Right. So now I have two variants of my avatar component. You can see that these new fields have appeared here in the design panel. And I have the option to create a property and also a value. What I tend to do is I go back to the first variant first. And I'm like, okay, what is the property that these variants are going to share? And I'm going to be very basic and I'm just going to change the color. So let me jump down to the fill here and I'm going to change this to a very different color. So that's green or greenish. Let's not get pedantic, Laura. And so the property that I want to create is going to be called color. Am I spelling it the British way? Yes, I am. And then if I go to my other variant, you can see that this property is still named color. And the values are in the layers panel as well. And so this one's going to be called purple. And this variant is going to be called green. Nearly typed variant again there, didn't I? And so this is just my basic variants. Maybe I want to create another one. What I can also do, I've been doing this quite frequently while creating variants recently, is just duplicating it. So I can use the duplicate button here or the good old Command D, Control D shortcut. And maybe this one is going to be yellow. I love yellow. And you see that when I created that variant, automatically this value box was focused so I could enter my value instantly. Oh, bit of a tickle, right. And so I'm going to change the fill to, oh, that's brat yellow, as they call it. Now let's make that a little bit more saturated, a little bit higher value. I like a warm yellow. There we go. And so now I have my component with its variants, my little avatar in purple, yellow, and green. And I can go into the assets panel again and see my components. My previews are playing up, and so, but I can hover over to see the name of the avatar. In fact, I'm just gonna do that so I can see the, no, not do that. Could see it better if I hover over it. And I drag this avatar component into my demo area. And so this is a copy of this main component, and the options I can choose between green and yellow and purple. So that is very basically how you would create a component variant. I'm just going to have a quick look through my notes to check that I have told you everything. Oh yeah, this file that I am adding here, I'll make sure that I also add this to the community after we finish this live session. So if you want to download the file and see exactly how it all works for yourself or follow along with it, if you're watching this video back later, you can feel free to. And so we have that. And okay, next I want to show you how I'm going to create a variance from existing components. So it's very common that you will already be working with components inside your design system or inside of your projects. For example, probably one of the most common components, because we love icons in UI design, is icons. So here I have 5, took me a second to see how many there were there, 5 different icons, chosen mostly at random. This isn't a secret code or something like that. And they're all in an icon group and they all exist already. But it would be really cool when you go to use these icons, this component, that you could just pick from a variant rather than having to switch between the different components. So what I can do then is I can select all of my components. I'm just going to do it from the layers panel here. And you see immediately when I look at the component section of the design panel, I have the option here to combine as variants. So if I do that, you can see that this is now a component with variants as demonstrated by this nice purple border. And all of my values very helpfully taken from the names of the components. So I don't need to think about that. All I need to think about is, well, okay, what's the property name for apple, baseball, burger, frown, headphones? I've been settling on type recently. It's a type of icon. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right term. If anyone has a better term for type when it comes to things like icons, please let me know, because I think you could improve my design systems as well. So I'm going to call that type. And so now if I go back into my assets and I've got my icon, we all know that this preview will appear in a second when I'm not looking at it. That's how it works, the gremlins. I'm going to drag this icon in. Oh, it's tiny little apple. It's very small. I'll zoom in so we can actually see this tiny little apple. And I can choose between apple or baseball or frown or headphones, all from within the same icon. So I think that is, there we go, there's the preview. Almost made me jump. That is all we've got on the basics of creating variants right now. I've got a load more cool examples to show you, but in the meantime, do we have any questions more about creating component variants right now? Remember, you can ask me questions on any platform that you're watching this on. Most of them. There might be one or two that aren't being monitored. I think most of them. Can variant values use tokens? Oh, you're getting ahead of me there, Martin. But I appreciate you asking the question. So I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes. Do we have any other? Oh, the answer is yes, by the way. The short answer, yes. But the long answer and a demo coming shortly. Do we have any other questions about compariants? I said it again. Okay, no more questions. Fabulous. Right. So then we can very excitedly get on to nesting components with variants. Now I'm just trying to remember which demo I was doing this on. Ah, yes. Okay. Right. So you can use another component inside a component, and this we would refer to as nesting. And you can go component inside a component inside a component, components all the way down. And you probably will end up doing this if you're creating any form of complex UI design where you're reusing a lot of the same design patterns over again. And you can do this with components using variants too. You can even make your variants use variants of a component. Does that make sense? I'm going to show you. So this here is an alert component that I've created. Again, you can see it as variants as well. And I have here my alert component, and it has the option for a type of component. So the types are kind of a semantic description of the colors. So I could just say, oh, this is the blue alert, this is the red alert, this is the yellow alert, and this is the green alert. But really, it makes sense to name them for where they're used in order that if I'm working with this in the future, I'm not like, oh, what color do I want in this situation? I'm like, this is a error situation, so I need the error alert. And then the color, it doesn't matter, it will follow on from that. I also have an option for button, true or false. And you can see in my variants here, you see I've got the info alert with a button, the info alert without a button, the warning with a button, the warning without a button, and so on and so forth. Each of these buttons is itself a component. So if I go into my variant for this info component here, or this info variant, this default, this is called default. This is how I've confused myself. I've named blue default in some places and info in the other, and that is a lesson in itself. So this default alert component, and it is showing a button. So if I go into the actions section, it is actually showing two buttons. That is a bit of a sneaky secret, but one is optional and one isn't. The one that isn't optional is this icon button. And the icon button itself has variants. It too is using the default state. So that means the color of this little cross icon here will be consistent with the rest of the alert. It is seamless, which means that even though it has a target area here, it doesn't have any borders or anything around it. And default is the state. Oh, Laura, you're learning lessons about naming things today. And the theme is info. That's why I've confused myself. And so obviously if I had a close button with the warning, it would be the wrong color, or at least it would if I had set that up correctly, which I apparently haven't. I think I've not set it up for the icon buttons. And again, the same goes for this text button here. Now what have I done? I have this component has conflicting variants. I can set that up. I know I'm going to show you how to set up to fix that problem in the next section. And so that's why it's doing that. But I can choose between, say, oh, that's very subtle, hard to tell. That's now red, in case you couldn't see it. That's the error theme. So I'll switch it back to the info theme. I could choose to show a different state of the button, like the focus state or the hovered state, and whether it shows an icon, which it doesn't right now, but it could. And let's reset. I now have to go fix the other thing before this works again. But I hope you get the idea. And what I found was I was often creating nested components where I would be like, oh, I want a different variant for this. I want to change the color. And then I was just overriding that component with some colors inside of designing the variant. And that's fine, that works. But really, if you're creating the same overrides again and again, it really makes sense to turn those overrides into variants on that nested component. I think that way, everything that you've produced is named and has documentation and it's consistent, because it's much easier to see, oh, there's a variant of this button that has these options, rather than, oh, is that fill color different? Oh, is that text size different? Oh, I'm not sure. So all of that you can document very well for your future self or for other people that you're working with in the future. So before we move on to fixing my mistakes, do we have any questions about nesting components with variants or any other variant or component related questions so far? I'm wondering how I can feed this into multivariate testing. Is there a good way of tracking unique permutations of nested variants? Is there a good way of tracking unique permutations of nested variants? Not per se in Penpot. So I can see that the idea would be to see, oh, okay, how many different combinations of variants are we using, or nested components are we using? But I do think that is a really cool idea. And what I imagine you could actually do is do that using code once you've exported that from Penpot, because all of these, in fact, I can show you right now. If I select this component here and I go to the inspect panel, it will show me the variant properties for this particular component. And so you can get all of that information out of the code. In fact, maybe that could make a really cool plugin to identify things like that. So short answer, no. Long answer, hey, if you're able to do it, let us know how you worked it out, because I think that would be really cool. Okay, do we have any more questions related to components, variants, Penpot? Okay, when duplicating whole grids of variants, is there a way that the resulting copy retains the organization that it was copied from? When they get pasted, they are all over the place. I'm not really sure what you mean by organization. I don't know whether you're referring to the layout or the other system. You're talking about duplicating lots of component variants. I can show you an example of that in the next example, and also one of the ways that I've chosen to organize my variants that I'm personally quite pleased with, and is incredibly nerdy. So if we have no more questions, we do. If you copy paste the whole layout inside the variants component. Oh, I see. So if you're applying a layout, say, for example, on this, if I'm setting it to, it's got flex layout, but if I set it to full width and then I copy paste it and I paste it into a variant and it's suddenly enormous. No, you are going to have to manage those things when you are setting up your variants. But I think it is worth, if I'm understanding you correctly, but what I think it is worth doing is thinking, okay, when you're creating variants, it's going to take time. You can create a huge number of variants. If I show you this card component, so bear in mind that I have 5 different properties here. You don't have to create a variant for every single combination of the properties. Maybe I don't have images for variants where I have buttons or something like that. So you don't have to create one for everyone. But I have done that for this card component. 5 properties. Obviously, the number of values is also relevant here. So you see I've got 4 values there. I've got, let me get out of that. A lot of accidental ones there. 2, 2, and 2 there. Ultimately, I have 64 variants here. And if I zoom out, you can see all of these different variants. So it can take a very long time to create these. I did this pretty quickly using duplication, which is probably why I've ended up with some extra values there. And so, but yeah, you can do it if for simple things like this pretty quickly. Actually, that reminds me, I was going to show you how to fix this issue. So sometimes if you have duplicated a lot of variants very quickly, you can find yourself being a little less organized than you thought you were being, which clearly I was here. And I've ended up with all these values, these default values, and this is where I haven't assigned true or false to any of these variants. And you're like, oh, but how do I work out which variant it is? Genius shortcut here, or not so genius shortcut. I just type in the word value into the search box in the layers, and then I can go and select, okay, oh, it's this variant. Is there a secondary button? No, false. Right, next one on the list, and so on. And it looks like it's a particular row that I had issues with. So that is, nope, that is a secondary button. Okay, that one, that does have a secondary button. That's true. That one does not have a secondary button. And you see every time I'm doing this, the list of additional values is going down. So this one does not. And this variant has identical properties and values to another variant. So which one is that? It's something that is compact and false and true. True, false, size compact, level 3. Maybe it's another one of the other ones that's wrong. Secondary. So being organized and creating a variance carefully is quite important, even if it's not something that I'm do what I say and not what I do. So that's true. And that one is false. And that one is true. Okay. And so now I won't have that option of value, value, value turning up in there. Okay, right. So I'm very excited for the next section. Do we have any other questions before I move on? You can ask questions from any platform. Is there a way to avoid doing that? Yes. The way to avoid doing that is, 64. So well, no, if you think about it, you are designing here. You are having to say, okay, what does it look like when there is no button? What does it look like when there is no image? And I mean, yeah, sure, if you're using some sort of AI tool or something, you could probably get something to estimate how that might look. But these are all design decisions. Each of these variants represent design decisions. They represent design decisions like, oh, what happens when there's only one button? Do I choose to keep this button in the bottom left-hand corner? Or maybe I've decided that actually with buttons, when there's only one of them, I want to make it full width. So it fits the whole width of the component. And because it's full width, I want the button text inside of that to be centered inside of my component, which would be using that option. So you can't automate everything in that sense. You probably don't need to create 64 variants. it's probably unlikely that you're going to be in a situation where every single variant would be useful, and you're probably creating variants in much smaller groups and not necessarily all at the same time. So the way to stop creating issues is to having unnamed values is to be careful when you're creating them and not do them in a rush like I did, but also to take care every time you're creating a variant to look at the design decisions and the impact that each property has on the overall design of the component. Okay, do we have any more questions? Can we use a show hide toggle? Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. Not right now. You can see that I have decided to say true false for this, but you could turn these values into show and hide equally easily. And indeed, you could reflect that in the component itself. So you could choose to hide rather than deleting the button or deleting the image, you could choose to show and hide it. I'd say that when you are considering deleting or showing and hiding and things like that with layers, um, be careful that your components and your variants are still have the same or very similar layer structure, because you don't want to mess with the connection conditions of that variant. The thing that tells Penpot, oh, these are the things that change in the variant, and these are the things that stay the same. And you can actually find a very specific list of those connection conditions in the user guide. It's so helpful. And it might seem like very advanced information to know, but I personally find it really useful if something isn't working and I'm not entirely sure why and why my variant isn't working. It's not really a problem I've had yet, but I can anticipate me creating issues in the future, as I tend to do. And so I would recommend you look up variants in the user guide and look at the connection conditions. I think that's really helpful bit of information there. So I think it's time to get into some design token goodness. So let's look at using components and variants with design tokens. So, if you don't know what design tokens are, they are defined values for design properties. So, things like colors and spacing and typography. And you can watch back. I've done a previous hands on using design tokens. There's also a lot of tutorials on the blog and a starter kit template that I created. So, there's plenty of places you can mess around with that if you want to have a deep dive. I'll show you very briefly what they are. And speaking of typography tokens, there are some new ones snuck in this latest release. So I'll show you those as well. So design tokens are shown in this, at the top of the left panel, we've got these tabs and we have a tokens tab. Now I have a lot of design tokens in here. You know I use them a lot. But for example, I have tokens for every color. So different shades of blue and blue gray and brown gray and gray pink and all of these different colors. I also have dimension tokens. And so these are dimensions based on different proportional ratios, which I might want to use for the basis of a modular scale for typography and spacing and things like that. I have the new font family token. And so here, if I look at this token, every token is a name and a value. And so here the name is font family dot primary, and here the value is a list of font families. And there's another new token, which is font weight. So this is a bit of a simpler one. And so this is font weight heavy, and the value is always going to be 800. And I've got letter spacing, that's a new one. And text case and text decoration are also new ones in here. You might not need to use those all the time, but they are very handy to have in there to be able to define what they are not as well as what they are. And if you're looking at this and going, oh, but I want to have a typography token that combines all of these values, composite tokens, typography tokens are, fingers crossed, hopefully going to be in the next release. So now is the time to start thinking about how you want to tokenize your typography. And of course, font size was already in there as well. So font size is still there. So for each of these buttons, I need is two button components. This is the icon button, and this is the text button. Now, buttons, I think, are probably one of the things that you're more likely to use a huge number of variants for. And there's quite a lot here. You can see I have, I've got states: default state, focus state, hovered state, and pressed state. And I have ones with icons, ones without icons. I have one with info color, one with success, one with warning, one with error. And here you can see this is the error that I was causing before. This is supposed to be secondary, styled like this, but it's actually styled like that. So we'll fix that shortly. But to see the design tokens I'm using for these buttons. So this button itself, yeah, it has an identical variant. Yeah, I can see it right there. So I have the different states here. I have the type. So primary is this fill color version, or this filled version, and secondary is this kind of outlined or ghost or whatever you want to call it version. Whether it has an icon showing or not, true or false, and the theme. So accent is purple, info is blue, success is green, warning is red, note, warning is yellow, error is red. And so I have all of the different combinations of these options down here. What you might have noticed in terms of organizing my variants, and I'm quite pleased with this. So if I select the main component itself, not the labels, I've actually switched the layout of these variants into the grid layout because I found it made it easier to see. But what it also enabled was for me to lay out my labels so I can document inside of the file what these are called at a glance without having to select the variant itself. And these are also in a grid, these labels, around the buttons. So I'm personally very pleased with this. This might be the nerdiest detail ever, and you're all like looking at this like, what has she done and why does this matter? But for me, being able to document things like component variants is really important. This is inevitably going to be part of a design system. It is likely that not just you, but other people will be using it. And so your main components can really form a big part of your documentation. So it's really useful to label it like this. If I select this button and I have these variants selected, and I now go into the tokens tab. Now I happen to know that these are in the light color set. And you can see that I have got my very long token name here. So this color is the color, button, accent, primary, default background color that is applied as the fill to this text. I can apply it by right-clicking on the token, and I choose either fill or stroke. Because it's a color, it can only be applied as a fill or as a stroke. And the same goes for the border. In fact, this border is transparent. You can see in this little preview swatch here, but I can select there. It won't have an effect on here because it is transparent, but for completionism, I have got it included in there. And so if I say go to this info button, something a bit different. So I've got that selected. And if I scroll down in my tokens, I need to actually group these tokens a bit better. But you can see I'm using the color, button, info, primary, default background. These took a long time to make. I'm not going to lie to you. But being able to have the tokens precisely describing the style that I want, the situation that it should be used inside of, and then applying to a variant that again describes exactly the situation it should be used for, and like having very clearly, when I don't mix up my names, like what each variant is and does, I think that is just irreplaceable in terms of design systems and in terms of making well-documented design. It also makes it far better for developers as well because everything has a structure, everything is well organized, everything has a name. If you're trying to have a conversation about this button, we both know that this is the default state for the info theme button. It's primary. We all know that. We have that shared language because we have documented it in that way. So it is worth it. And if you look at the token itself, actually, my token is actually referencing a completely different color. So I can use referencing aliases in a lot of my tokens in order to build up these systems quite easily. And I'm just going to fix these. So you saw before, it's really handy that you get a warning when your variants are duplicates of variants that already exist. It's telling you, you need to change this or delete it, because it's going to like confuse the system if you have multiple variants that are exactly the same. So I'm going to change this to, so this is default, that's what it needs to be. And this is supposed to be secondary. So you see the warning has gone away now. I think it's the same for this one. Yeah, that's supposed to be secondary. That is supposed to be secondary. And that too is supposed to be secondary. And then I just need to go in and apply the relevant design tokens. So first I have the tokens for the button itself. So this is, we're up in the realms of accent buttons. And I'm going to start at this end because it's easier to scroll down the list. And so this is a color button. The default, no, this is not the primary button. This is a secondary button. Okay. Default background for secondary button, fill, and stroke. I then need to select the text and apply the text token. And to the icon, let's get in there, apply the icon color. Oh, did I apply that accidentally to the text? Yes, I did. And for the next one, this is the focused style. Very important to make sure we're designing focused styles for our keyboard navigators out there, and anyone else really. Focus styles are great. And so we've selected both of those for the icon, and so on and so forth. And now when we go in to use our little button, we can say choose the secondary theme with an icon, and we've got the correct colors showing in there. Now let me just see if there's anything else that I missed that I wanted to show you about this. I fixed my buttons. Oh yes, I have the one final really cool thing I wanted to, one of the reasons why this is really cool. So I have put all this effort in, but isn't it really cool when you can switch to dark mode and all your button styles update like that? Like, isn't that really cool? And that's possible because of design tokens. There are lots of other things I could do as well, but I know that this one works right now, so I'm just showing you that. But yeah, because I've used tokens, I can then use theming that applies regardless of the variant as well. So I think it's time to go to our final big time Q&A. Oh, that was great timing. So our final big time Q&A. So let's go to the main variants, questions and answers. Get your questions ready. So do you have any, oh, straight in. Oh, hi, Dave. So Dave asks, could I select multiple buttons at once and then change the values for all of them at once? For example, 6 buttons and icon equals true. You absolutely can, Dave. So if I wanted to select all of these like that, you can see here the state is set as mixed because each of these have a different state, but the type is primary, the icon is true, theme's accent, but I could change this and it would change it for all of them. So yeah, that's a great way if you're working on a lot of variants at once. So going back to our previous question about, do I have to do all of these variants? You can do it in bulk to some degree. So that is a really good way around it. Do we have any other questions? Remember that you can ask a question, whatever platform you're watching this on. ask in the chat. If I don't catch it during the session, I'll make sure that I come back to it later on. And you can also hop into the community and you can ask any question in there. I'm usually hanging around in there. I like to spend my mornings chilling out in the community, but there's plenty of other cool people, especially the Penpot team, that are there to answer your questions too. Can we perform calculations in tokens like in Token Studio for Figma, i.e. round to base button space, multiply by base button font size, 0? Not round to, but other calculations, absolutely. And I'm doing that here. So let me find a good example. You know, earlier I told you about the dimensions. So if I go to view that token, I have a base number of 8. It's just a random number, really. And the major second, say, dimension is 1.125. And these are multiplied together in because I have density in here as well. So my density is the major third dimension. And then if I go to, I can either choose a modular scale, which is multiplied by the dimension, the density, or a linear one that isn't. And so my modular scale, all these different values here are multiplied versions of the other values. So I'm using calculations in here. You can use plus, minus, multiply, and division to my knowledge right now. And you can use bracket calculations as well. So you can do some quite complex stuff. I don't know how complex you'd want to get, but you can create proportional typographic scales. You can create, like I've done here. These are all proportional scales. And I'm a bit scared to change the theme right now in case there's bits I've forgotten to apply and so it breaks. But you can do that as well. And combining those token calculations with references can make for a very quickly scalable system without having to enter too many raw values into it. Do we have any more questions? Can I use my state variants for prototyping? So we touched on that one earlier, and the answer is not right now, but loads of people are asking it. We can see why that would be a really cool feature. And so I would say if you go to the Penpot community and let them know what your use case is, what you would usually use it for, I think it's particularly valuable to let them know what states do you usually use, because I'm a web girly. So I would have my default state, I would have a focus state, I'd have a hovered state, but I might have an active state, or is it a press state? And so knowing what those states are, because of course features like this are built around conventions. And so I think that would be helpful if you have examples that you could share in the community. Okay, we've got time for a couple more questions. Do variant properties show in the inspect panel? And now I showed you this very briefly earlier, but I could show you again here. So let me change this sign up button back. We're going to make it hovered, and we're going to make it primary, and it's not got an icon, and I'm going to use the, I don't know, success. I mean, that is a classic abuse of a semantic styling there, using green success for a sign up button. And then if I go to the inspect panel, while I have this selected, I can also select other components from the inspect panel. It will show me a huge amount of information about this component itself, but it is also showing me each variant and property that I have for this particular button. So all of this will show in the inspect panel. And I've got a whole lot of other information like the flex layout in there as well. And of course, that means that is also reflected in the code in the CSS and HTML and SVG panels as well. Okay, maybe time for one more question before we wrap up. Can I add annotations for variants? That's a great question because I haven't shown you that yet. So if I'm going into when I'm creating the variant, so the bit that's inside of the purple border, and we said this was a hovered one, so I'm going to set it on the hovered one. So I've selected the hovered variant. It's easier to see if I'm on the layers panel for this text button. And if I go to the little contextual menu here, I can create an annotation. And I'm going to say, don't use this button for signups or any random button you want to be green. Use it for situations where we want to indicate a successful interaction to the user. You'll probably find a more concise way to say it than that. And then I can hit the check, and that has saved that annotation there. And so now if I go to my variant, and I can see the annotation there in the when I'm using the component. So this is a great way to provide even more documentation. And it's in the inspect panel as well. So that's really handy if you need something that's communicated across the entirety of your team in a way that's not going to accidentally be deleted or edited as well. Okay, so I think that's there's so much information. I feel like I have said compariants plenty of times, which really shows the chaos going on in my brain, let alone in this file. A reminder that I will share this file in the community after this live session is up. I'll just hop on over there and upload it so you can jump around and play with it. And you can also get this template from the Penpot Hub. If you do come across any errors like that I've shown you today inside of that template, please let me know on the community and I will get it fixed. We are not all perfect. And yeah, before we go, Penpot Fest is in a couple of weeks. It is on the 8th to the 10th of October, and I will be there. I'm going to give a talk about collaboration. It's going to be a fun one. And I am also going to be hosting a panel with some fabulous guests. So I think that's going to be really good fun. I think there are a few tickets still available, and you can find out more about it at penpot.app/penpotfest. Penpot Fest is all one word there. And I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere in the description here as well. And in case you didn't know, we've also created a 100% free UI design course. So that's UI design with Penpot. That's me teaching you how to do UI design. And we just happen to be using Penpot because it's a great tool and it's free and open source as well. And the next unit, so if you've been looking forward to the next unit being released, this is the text and typography unit, and that is going to be available next week. So I'm very excited to share that with you, all the hard work that the team has been putting into that. And you can find this free UI design course at penpot.app/courses. So thank you so much for joining me this week. Remember, you can subscribe or you can follow on whatever platform you're on so that you're the first to know about the next hands-on live stream. And really, an extra big thank you to everyone that has joined us live here today. Your questions and your comments and your feedback are what make these sessions really worthwhile. It's what makes me being here in this room right now really worthwhile. And so I hope you all have a fabulous day. Bye-bye.